My name is Axel, 21 years old, college junior at Eastern State University, and currently living a double life that's becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. I've always been a private person, preferring to keep my personal business to myself, especially in the conservative small town where I grew up. Coming out wasn't an option there, so I learned to compartmentalize. The public Axel who dated girls occasionally and played along with his friends' heteronormative conversations, and the private Axel who knew he was gay since 8th grade but kept it locked away. College was supposed to be different. Eastern State has a reputation for being progressive, with an active LGBTQ+ community and pride flags hanging in dorm windows. But old habits die hard, and by the time I realized I could have been open from day one, I'd already established myself as straight Axel to my roommates and friends. The longer I maintained the charade, the harder it became to correct the misconception. So I lived in the shadows, creating dating app profiles with faceless pictures, always meeting guys in neighboring towns, never bringing anyone back to my apartment. It wasn't ideal, but it worked, until I met Phoenix. We connected on a subreddit for gay gamers, of all places. I'd posted about struggling to find other players who understood both gaming culture and gay culture without leaning into stereotypes. Phoenix responded, and we moved to private messages, then to Discord, then to daily texts and nightly video calls. Phoenix was everything I wasn't: confident, openly gay since high school, living his truth without apology. He had an infectious laugh that made his eyes crinkle at the corners, dark curly hair he was constantly pushing back from his forehead, and an extensive collection of graphic tees featuring obscure video game references. He was studying computer science at a university about 3 hours from mine, and over the 6 months we'd been talking, he'd become not just my first real boyfriend, but my best friend. The problem was, no one in my life knew he existed, at least not as my boyfriend. My roommates, Jake and Trevor, thought I spent hours on my computer playing games with friends or studying. They had no idea I was falling in love through a screen, planning a future with someone they'd never met. Which brings me to the current crisis. Phoenix was coming to visit for the weekend, his first time at my university, our first time meeting in person after months of virtual connection. I should have been ecstatic. Instead, I was panicking because I told Jake and Trevor that my brother was visiting from out of state. Yes, my brother. The brother I don't actually have. It seemed like a brilliant solution at the time. I needed an explanation for why a strange guy would be staying in our apartment for the weekend. A brother was perfect. It explained the physical closeness that might slip out between us, gave us privacy without suspicion, and wouldn't raise eyebrows if we went out together. What I hadn't anticipated was the elaborate web of lies I'd need to construct to maintain this fiction. Suddenly, I needed to create an entire backstory for a sibling who didn't exist, explain why I'd never mentioned him before, we weren't close growing up, but reconnected recently, and coach Phoenix on the details of my family that I'd shared with my roommates. This is insane, Phoenix said during our video call the night before his visit. Why don't you just tell them I'm a friend from another university? Because, I explained for what felt like the 100th time, Jake and Trevor know all my friends. They'd wonder why I've never mentioned you. And friends don't typically share a bed. We could say I'm taking the couch, Phoenix countered, running a hand through his curls in frustration. And then actually sneak into my room every night? Jake's a light sleeper. He'd hear us. Phoenix sighed, his expression a mixture of disappointment and resignation. I hate this, Axe. I hate being your dirty little secret. You're not, I insisted, guilt twisting in my stomach. You're the most important person in my life. I'm just not ready for everyone to know that yet. I know, he said softly, and I'm trying to respect that. But pretending to be your brother feels wrong. It's just for this weekend, I promised. Just until I figure out how to come out to them. He nodded, but the sadness didn't leave his eyes. Okay, so what's my backstory again? I'm your older brother by 2 years. You're studying computer science at Berkeley, not Michigan State. Your name is, well, your name is still Phoenix, That's weird enough that it works as a family name. I attempted a joke, but it fell flat. And why haven't you mentioned me before? We had a falling out when I came out to our parents 3 years ago. You sided with them initially, but recently reached out to apologize and rebuild our relationship. Phoenix raised an eyebrow. The irony of creating a homophobic backstory for your fake straight self's fake brother, who is actually your very real gay boyfriend, is not lost on me. I winced. I know it's ridiculous, but it's just temporary. It better be, he said, but his expression had softened. Because I didn't fall for closest case Axel. I fell for the real Axel who geeks out over obscure RPGs and writes passionate defenses of character development in game narratives. That's still me, I assured him. The real me is the one you know. The one no one else gets to see. Yet, he amended. The one no one else gets to see yet. The next morning, I was a bundle of nerves. Phoenix's train was due to arrive at 11:23 a.m., and I'd spent the early hours cleaning my already tidy room, changing the sheets twice, and rearranging the few personal items I had on display. Jake, ever observant, noticed my anxiety at breakfast. Dude, relax, he said, pouring himself a bowl of cereal. It's just your brother, not the president. We haven't seen each other in a while, I explained, which wasn't technically a lie. Phoenix and I had never seen each other in person at all. I want everything to be perfect. Family's complicated. Trevor chimed in from the couch, where he was already playing video games despite the early hour. My sister and I can't be in the same room for more than an hour without fighting about something. I nodded, grateful for the easy opening. Yeah, Phoenix and I have had our issues too. That's why I haven't talked about him much. Jake's eyebrows shot up. Your brother's name is Phoenix? Like the city. Like the mythological bird, actually. I corrected, reciting the explanation Phoenix himself had given me months ago. Our parents were going through a mythology phase. And they named you Axel? Trevor asked skeptically. Doesn't seem to fit the theme. I hadn't prepared for this line of questioning. They'd moved on to car parts by then. It came out as a question rather than a statement. Jake laughed. Your parents sound wild. Can't wait to meet the legendary Phoenix. As I drove to the train station, my stomach was in knots. 6 months of video calls, thousands of text messages, countless hours of shared confidences, and I was about to see Phoenix in person for the first time. What if the chemistry wasn't the same? What if he looked at me and felt nothing? What if I'd built this entire relationship on a digital foundation that couldn't withstand reality? My fears evaporated the moment I saw him step off the train. He was exactly as he appeared on screen, yet somehow more vibrant, more real, more present. His curly hair was slightly windblown, and he wore a faded t-shirt with the Silent Hill logo under an open plaid shirt. His eyes, scanning the platform anxiously, were the warm brown I'd stared into through my laptop screen countless nights. When he spotted me, his entire face lit up with a smile so genuine it made my chest ache. He rushed toward me, and I found myself moving to meet him, all my carefully constructed plans forgotten as he dropped his bag and pulled me into a tight embrace. You're real, he murmured against my neck, his arms wrapped around me. You're actually real. I held him just as tightly, breathing in the scent of his shampoo, feeling the solid warmth of him against me. So are you. We stayed like that, holding each other in the middle of the platform, until the sound of another train arriving broke the moment. Phoenix pulled back slightly, his hands still on my shoulders, eyes taking in every detail of my face. Hi, he said simply, his smile softening into something more intimate. Hi. I echoed, suddenly shy despite the months of late-night conversations. He glanced around, noticing the curious glances from passers-by. So, brother, he said, emphasizing the word with a mix of humor and resignation. Are you going to show me around this famous university of yours? Reality crashed back in. Right. We were supposed to be brothers in public. I stepped back, creating an appropriate sibling distance between us. Of course. Let's get your bag to the car first. The drive back to my apartment was surreal. Phoenix sat in the passenger seat, his presence filling the car with an energy I wasn't used to. He talked animatedly about the train ride, the scenery he'd passed, the book he'd been reading. Normal conversation, nothing that would seem suspicious to an observer, but his eyes kept meeting mine with a depth of feeling that made it hard to focus on the road. At a red light, I allowed myself to reach over and take his hand, squeezing it briefly before returning mine to the wheel. "I can't believe you're really here," I said. "Believe it," he replied, his voice warm. "Though I still think this brother charade is going to backfire spectacularly." He wasn't wrong, but I pushed the worry aside. "We'll be fine. Jake and Trevor are nice guys, but they're not exactly observant. Jake spends most of his time at his girlfriend's place anyway, and Trevor is perpetually glued to his Xbox." "If you say so," Phoenix said, skepticism clear in his tone. "But for the record, I'm a terrible actor." "Just be yourself," I advised. "Minus the part where you're madly in love with me, of course." He laughed, the sound filling the car and warming me from the inside. "That's a pretty big part of who I am these days, but I'll do my best." We arrived at the apartment to find it empty, a small mercy. A note on the fridge informed me that Jake had gone to his girlfriend's and Trevor was at a gaming tournament until evening. Relief flooded through me at the temporary reprieve. "Looks like we have the place to ourselves for a few hours," I said, trying to sound casual despite the way my pulse had quickened. Phoenix set his bag down, looking around the living room with interest. "So this is where the mysterious Axel lives." He picked up a framed photo of me with Jake and Trevor at a football game. "Your roommates?" "Yeah," I confirmed. "Jake's the tall blonde one. Trevor's the one with the glasses." "They look exactly like I imagined from your descriptions," Phoenix said, replacing the photo. Then he turned to face me, his expression shifting from curiosity to something more intense. "So, are you going to give me the tour?" The tour lasted all of 30 seconds before we were in my bedroom, door firmly closed behind us. 6 months of virtual connection exploded into physical reality as Phoenix backed me against the wall, his hands cupping my face as he kissed me with an urgency that matched my own. I tangled my fingers in his curls, finally able to feel their softness, to pull him closer until there was no space left between us. "Been wanting to do that since the first time I saw you," he murmured against my lips, his breath warm and sweet. "Me too," I admitted, tracing the line of his jaw with my fingertips, marveling at the tangible reality of him. "You have no idea how many times I've imagined this." "Oh, I think I have some idea," he countered with a grin, pressing closer to make his point. We fell onto my bed in a tangle of limbs and breathless laughter, exploring each other with the curious intensity of new lovers combined with the comfortable familiarity of old friends. Time seemed to fold in on itself, minutes stretching into hours that felt simultaneously endless and far too brief. Afterward, lying together in the narrow confines of my twin bed, Phoenix traced patterns on my chest with his fingertips. "So this is what we've been missing," he said softly. "Kind of makes all those video calls seem inadequate in retrospect." I caught his hand, bringing it to my lips. "They weren't inadequate. They got us here." He smiled, but there was a shadow behind it. "Here being your secret boyfriend pretending to be your brother." The reminder stung, but I couldn't argue. "I know it's not ideal." "It's more than not ideal, Axe," he said, propping himself up on one elbow to look at me properly. "It's unsustainable. What's the long-term plan here? Am I going to be introduced as your brother to everyone in your life? Are we going to have to act like siblings in public forever?" "Of course not," I protested. "I just need time." "Time for what? You're not in your hometown anymore. You're at a progressive university with a thriving LGBTQ+ community. What are you really afraid of?" It was a question I'd been avoiding asking myself. What was I afraid of? Jake and Trevor weren't homophobes. They probably wouldn't care if I was gay. So why the elaborate deception? "I don't know," I admitted finally. "I guess I'm afraid of being seen differently." of everything changing. Phoenix's expression softened. Things are already different, Ax. You're in love with a man. You're living a double life that's clearly making you stressed and unhappy. Wouldn't it be easier to just live your truth? Before I could respond, the sound of the front door opening and closing echoed through the apartment. We froze, staring at each other in alarm. Axel? You home? Trevor's voice called. Shit, I whispered, scrambling out of bed and grabbing for my clothes. They're back early. Phoenix watched me with a mixture of amusement and resignation as he also began to dress. Showtime, he murmured. Ready to introduce me to the family? I shot him a pleading look. Please just stick to the plan. Just for now. He sighed but nodded. Fine. But this conversation isn't over. Dressed and hopefully not looking like we'd just been intimately acquainted with each other's bodies, we emerged from my bedroom to find Trevor arranging an impressive array of snacks on the coffee table. There you are, he said, looking up. The tournament ended early. Server issues or something. This must be your brother. Phoenix stepped forward, extending his hand with a smile that looked only slightly forced. Phoenix, nice to meet you. Trevor, heard almost nothing about you. Trevor replied with his characteristic bluntness, shaking Phoenix's hand. Axel's not big on sharing personal details. So I've gathered, Phoenix said, shooting me a pointed look that Trevor fortunately missed. You guys have the same eyes, Trevor observed, glancing between us. But otherwise wouldn't have pegged you as brothers. My stomach dropped. I hadn't considered the physical comparison. While Phoenix and I both had blue eyes, the similarity ended there. His Mediterranean heritage gave him olive skin and dark curls, while my Scandinavian background left me fair-skinned with straight blonde hair. Different fathers. Phoenix supplied smoothly before I could panic. Our mom has eclectic taste in men. Trevor nodded, apparently accepting this explanation without question. Cool. You guys want to join the gaming marathon? Jake's coming back with pizza later. Absolutely. Phoenix agreed enthusiastically. What are we playing? And just like that, my boyfriend and my roommate were settling onto the couch, controllers in hand, discussing the relative merits of different combat systems as if they'd known each other for years. I stood watching them, a strange mixture of relief and guilt swirling in my chest. The afternoon passed with surprising ease. Phoenix fit seamlessly into our usual dynamic, his natural charm and genuine interest in Trevor's opinions winning him easy acceptance. When Jake returned with pizza, the four of us fell into comfortable conversation about classes, video games, and campus life. So Phoenix, Jake said between bites, what was Axel like as a kid? Any embarrassing stories we should know about? I tensed, but Phoenix didn't miss a beat. Oh, he was a total nerd, he said with a fond smile in my direction. Always had his nose in a book or was glued to a game. One time, he was so engrossed in reading that he walked straight into a glass door at the mall, broke his glasses, and gave himself a bloody nose. That actually happened to me in 9th grade, I admitted, impressed by how Phoenix had woven a real story I'd told him into our fictional shared history. Remember that summer you decided you were going to learn Japanese, just so you could play import games without waiting for localization? Phoenix continued, building on details from our many conversations. God, yes. I laughed, relaxing into the role. I made it through about 3 hiragana characters before giving up. The evening continued like this, Phoenix and I drawing on our intimate knowledge of each other to construct a believable sibling relationship. To my relief, Jake and Trevor seemed to accept Phoenix without question, even inviting him to join their fantasy football league despite his admission that he knew nothing about the sport. As the night wore on, Jake retreated to his room for a video call with his girlfriend, and Trevor fell asleep on the couch during a movie marathon. Phoenix and I exchanged a glance, silently agreeing it was safe to retire to my room. Once the door was closed behind us, Phoenix let out a long breath. That was exhausting, he said, collapsing onto my bed. I had to stop myself from kissing you like 50 times. You did amazing, I told him, sitting beside him and taking his hand. They completely bought it. Yeah, well, turns out I'm a better actor than I thought. He squeezed my hand, but there was a tightness around his eyes that hadn't been there earlier. But Axe, I meant what I said before. This can't be a long-term solution. I nodded, guilt resurfacing. I know. And you're right. There's no real reason not to come out to them. I'm just scared. Of what exactly? I struggled to articulate the nebulous fear that had kept me in the closet despite being in an environment where it was likely safe to be out. I guess. I've been playing a role for so long. I'm not sure who I am without it. What if they like straight Axel better than gay Axel? Phoenix sat up, taking both my hands in his. Straight Axel is a fiction. There is only Axel. Thoughtful, intelligent, passionate about game design. Terrible at cooking but tries anyway. Falls asleep during movies but insists he was just resting his eyes. His expression was earnest, blue eyes holding mine. That's who they know and like, regardless of who you're attracted to. His words struck a chord deep within me. Perhaps the fear wasn't really about Jake and Trevor's reaction, but about fully accepting this part of myself, about integrating the compartmentalized aspects of my identity into a cohesive whole. You're right, I said softly. I need to stop hiding. Not just for us, but for me. Phoenix's smile was like sunrise. Really, really, I confirmed, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders with the decision. Not tonight. They're half asleep and I want to do this right. But tomorrow, I promise. The relief in his eyes was worth any anxiety the prospect caused me. He pulled me into a kiss that felt different from our earlier ones. Less desperate, more tender, full of promise. I'm proud of you, he murmured against my lips. And for what it's worth, I think they'll surprise you. We spent the night tangled together in my too-small bed, talking in whispers about everything and nothing, making plans for future visits, dreaming about eventually living in the same city. For the first time, those dreams felt possible, concrete rather than abstract possibilities. The next morning, we were woken by a knock on my door. Before I could fully process what was happening, Trevor's voice called through the wood. Axel, have you seen my charger? I think I left it in here yesterday. Phoenix and I exchanged panicked glances. We were both shirtless, clearly sharing the small bed in a way that couldn't be mistaken for brotherly. There was no time to rearrange ourselves into something more innocent. Just a second. I called, my voice sleep-rough and obviously nervous. But it was too late. The door swung open, and Trevor stood in the doorway, already talking. Sorry to bust in, but I really need to, oh. He froze, taking in the scene before him. Phoenix and me, obviously just woken up, obviously sharing a bed in a way that brothers definitely do not. His eyes widened, darting between us in confusion. I said eloquently, my mind blank with panic. I'll just come back later, Trevor said, backing away slowly. Wait, I called, making a split-second decision. No more hiding. No more lies. Trevor, this is Phoenix. My boyfriend, not my brother. I'm sorry I lied to you guys. Trevor paused in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Phoenix squeezed my hand under the covers, a silent show of support. Your boyfriend, Trevor repeated slowly. Not your brother. Yes, I confirmed, my heart pounding. I'm gay. I have been always. I just haven't been ready to tell people. Trevor was quiet for a long moment, and I braced myself for anger, disgust, or at the very least, disappointment in my deception. Instead, he started laughing, not mockingly, but with genuine amusement. Dude, he said when he could speak again. Did you seriously think we didn't know? It was my turn to stare in confusion. What, Axel? Trevor said patiently. You have a rainbow pin on your backpack. You've never once shown interest in any girl we've introduced you to. You get weirdly invested in queer storylines in video games. Jake and I figured it out like first semester freshman year. I blinked, processing this information. And you were okay with it? Why wouldn't we be? Trevor shrugged. It's the 21st century, man. Plus, Jake's sister is a lesbian, and my cousin is non-binary. It's really not a big deal. Relief washed over me, so intense it made me slightly dizzy. Why didn't you say anything? We figured you'd tell us when you were ready, Trevor explained. Everyone has their own timeline for this stuff. He turned his attention to Phoenix, who was watching the exchange with barely suppressed delight. Though I gotta say, the fake brother thing is a new one. That's some sitcom-level scheming. Phoenix finally let his laughter escape. That's what I told him. I said it would backfire spectacularly. And yet you went along with it. I pointed out, nudging him with my elbow. What can I say? I'm a supportive boyfriend. Phoenix grinned at Trevor. Nice to properly meet you, by the way, as Axel's non-sibling partner. Likewise, Trevor said with a matching grin. Though I have to say, the different father's story was pretty convincing. Thank you, Phoenix said, looking pleased. I improvised that on the spot. I'm really sorry for lying, I told Trevor, sobering. I should have trusted you guys. Trevor's expression softened. Hey, coming out is personal. You do it when and how you're ready. No apologies needed. He glanced between us. They'll maybe put some shirts on before you come out for breakfast. Jake's making waffles, and while he'll be cool with the gay thing, he might not be ready for the full morning after visual. With that, he closed the door, leaving Phoenix and me staring at each other in stunned silence. Well, Phoenix said finally, that went significantly better than expected. I fell back against the pillows, a laugh bubbling up from somewhere deep inside me. They knew. This whole time, they knew, and they were just waiting for me to be ready. Told you they'd surprise you, Phoenix said, sliding closer to wrap an arm around my waist. So how does it feel, being out to your roommates? I considered the question, taking inventory of my emotions. The fear and anxiety that had been my constant companions were gone, replaced by a lightness I hadn't expected. It feels right, like I can finally breathe properly. That's how it should feel, he said softly, pressing a kiss to my shoulder. Being yourself. I should have done this months ago, I admitted. Could have saved us both a lot of stress. Better late than never, Phoenix replied. And hey, we got a good story out of it. Remember when you pretended to be my brother and it lasted all of 18 hours? I laughed, pulling him closer. At least the hardest part is over. Now we just have to tell Jake. After waffles, Phoenix insisted. Coming out is hungry work. As we got dressed and prepared to face the day, and Jake, as our authentic selves, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Grateful for Phoenix, who had patiently supported me while gently pushing me toward honesty. Grateful for Trevor and Jake, who had silently accepted me long before I was ready to accept myself. And grateful, finally, for the chance to bring together the compartmentalized parts of myself into one whole person. My name is Axel, 21 years old, college junior, and for the first time in my life, living one truth instead of two separate half-truths. It took meeting the right person to give me the courage to be myself, and while the journey wasn't without its awkward moments, and one particularly ill-conceived brother charade, I wouldn't change a thing. Because every step, every misstep, led me here, to breakfast with my boyfriend and my friends, to a life without secrets, to the simple joy of being exactly who I am.